Hello, my name is Matthew Kulesha and I'm one of the JBI trainers. And in this short video, I want to show you the excerpt of our recent training so you can have a better feel of how those remote trainings work. So usually it's not just me, my talking head. Usually we can see the screen like this. We can see code editor, some code, and in most training it's not slides, it's not just talking, it's actually digging into code, writing some code, doing exercises and working together. So here's an example from our previous training in TypeScript and React, and this is the code, the front-end code actually created together with the participants, which we started with some design, some mock-ups, and step by step we try to add different dynamic stuff to this code. So it actually works. We can see here it's an application, it should work, and it's working with mock data, so it's not connecting to server yet, some localhost fake data. So the next step would be to connect to the server. So we have some fetch albums mock function here, which we already know. In React we have special hook here, we have state, we discuss all of that. This is actually like the second day of the training. So what we're going to do, we have some code we previously worked with, where we explained, and now we go to next step. So I can, for example, disable mocks, and the goal is to connect to real server. In this instance, we're going to use some existing API, for example, open Spotify API to search some music. So I would change this fetch albums mock to another function, which won't be using localhost. It will be using actual API. So I'm just replacing this function. Update, import. Okay, save the files. And what we do is we don't use working simple examples. We try to use something, see if it works, and yep, if it fails like this, there's an error. That's a great chance to work it out, to see how we can debug those errors and how can we find solutions. So this is always workshop, finding solutions, discussing. So this way you learn even if something goes wrong. So let's see how to debug this. I can see some component is failing here, so I can make a breakpoint. This is what we do on the training. I can try it again, see what went wrong. So participants in the training can learn step by step the whole process, not just the tools, the trainings. Okay, so I can see, for example, we're getting some object with albums and items, great, but we are expecting here a map, which means it should be array. So there's something wrong. If we go to network, we can see, for example, network, that we got real response from the server. That's correct. Yep, but the structure is not what we expected. So I should add albums and items. So I could go here and add some data, albums, items. And the issue is here, I again made some typo. This is still wrong. There's no hints. The compiler doesn't help me at all. This is TypeScript. It should tell me what it is. But because this data is coming from the server, this is usual problem with TypeScript, where we don't know the type. So we need to add some types here. And if I can look at the data, we can describe this very easily with TypeScript and add some type information to our project. So I'll find, do we have some existing types in here? Let's say our album, music album type. And going to, by our example, so I can say like this, interface, let's reuse this one, create a new type, that will be albums, search response, like this. And we already know that there are albums, which has items, but wait a moment, because I've seen that before, we used this type before. It's called paging object. This is one we used before. Let me look it up. So TypeScript again should suggest. Yeah, we have suggestion here, paging object, which should hold multiple albums, and I can check it. Yep, it requires one argument. I can hover here and see this is exactly the structure we're looking for. It's exactly what I've seen in the debugger. Perfect. So we can use this type, and there are two options. I can just assume the server response has this type. So I can say here, let's assume this is the type. I need to import this, and again TypeScript is suggesting sure this file looks fine, and now it should tell me immediately I have a typo here. Albums items. Yeah, still typo. I don't even have to write it actually. When you have the correct types, what you can do, you can use just auto suggest right now here and just pick and choose wherever you need. And if you make a mistake, again it will tell you in different file that you're returning a wrong value, so it has to be actually items. Yep, we have items here. That looks fine. So this is one way to do it, and it's telling me, okay, my data should work fine. But this is still not very good, because what we are doing, we are assuming the server will return correct response, which might not be the case in this situation. The better approach to handle it would be actually to use something called type narrowing, type guards, or type assertions. So next step would be to create a function which I would call, for example, assert albums set response, so this one, and we would use something very interesting, because we would take any response which we don't know really what it is, and here we would make sure we have correct response using JavaScript. And using this special syntax, I will say for now return true, or I just won't do anything, I would just say assert response is actually what we need. So if I create a function like this, which is not finished right now, but if I put it here, I put a response, for example, which is our data, the TypeScript magic, now TypeScript believes me that this function is making a true assertion, a true validation. So after this point, if you look at the data, magically, even if I start with unknown, or undefined, or any type, or unknown type. So this is what I'm getting from server actually. I don't know what it is. So up to this point, we don't know what it is. But the function we are going to write will make sure, validate the data. So from this point on, it will be what we need, not because we say so, but because here we have exactly the code we need. So that will be the next step of the training, which I will invite you to actually attend and see for yourself. We'll see different ways to make sure your code is correct, make sure you have correct assertions, correct information, correct hints, so you don't have to remember, check everything. TypeScript is doing that for you, and if you do it correctly, many times you don't have to actually write the types. Those types are from the server, you have to write them. Many times I show you, for example, how you can derive the types. So for example here, if you look at it, when I plug a function here, fetch albums, TypeScript already knows that the return value is an album. So by inference, it knows the type of this query, that it holds in albums, so it knows the data is actually album or undefined if we don't have any response. And then it knows here the data matches this one, and it checks all the way down. As you can see in here, we barely have any types because inference is working properly. And if we go to our application, let's try this again. Let's search for something interesting, like, let's say maybe this one. Yeah, we have some results. These are actual real results with real data. And here, for example, if I test the URLs we created before with mock data, I should get also response with Phil Collins Spotify with real ID. And what we do in this point, we go to the training part. So we go to this album details, for example, different screen, different mockup, and participants can do the same thing I did. So they can look up the screen, album details, check the types, check the function we are using, and they can see it's not typed correctly. We're missing the types here. If they say unknown, they got the same problem. So now what we can do, what participants usually do in the training, they can look how the trainer is doing this part, and then on the other example, they can follow and try that for themselves, ask questions. We can share the screen, we can work in groups. So this way you not only watch, this is not a YouTube tutorial, this is actually a workshop. So I'm showing you something, explaining why it is like this, how can you use it, how to do it yourself, why this is good practice, and then the participants can do it on their own, try it, ask question. So this is it for our short introductory video. I hope you like it. I hope you see the benefits of using actually patterns and tools like VS Code, TypeScript. Of course, we will use a lot of more interesting libraries and tools to not only teach you the technology, but also the good practice, the patterns, the process that makes you more productive, to working with like mockups, to testing, to many interesting things. So I hope to see you on the training.